They gave my sister the business. So I let it burn fire. When I found out my parents handed the family business over to my sister, I stopped busting my back with those 80-hour weeks for free, no less. A week later, Frank rang me up in a panic because we were about to lose our biggest client. All I said was, let Rachel handle it. She's the chosen one now, right? But before I dive into all that, let me say this. I've noticed the channel's been slowing down a bit lately. If you're here and you like these stories, hitting that subscribe button is the easiest way to show support. It's fast, it's free, and it really helps keep this community growing strong. Hey, before we dive in, take a second to read this. I've noticed the channel's been slowing down a bit, and the easiest way to help us grow is by hitting that subscribe button. It's quick, doesn't cost a thing, and it really does make a difference in keeping this awesome community going strong. Now, back to the story. I've always been the type who believes in earning his keep. When I came on board the family business fresh out of college, I didn't expect any favors. My folks had built a mid-sized consulting firm from scratch, and I respected the hell out of them for it. For nearly a decade, I was proud to carry that torch. I put in 80 hours a week, not because they told me to, but because I wanted to prove I was capable, that I could lead, bring fresh ideas, and keep their legacy alive. For the first 5 years, I didn't take a paycheck. Every dime I made went straight back into the company. I was living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment while my buddies were out buying condos and flashy cars. To me, the sacrifice made sense. My little sister Rachel took a very different route. Always polished and put together, private school, fancy clothes, jetting off on weekend trips overseas. She majored in marketing, played around with influencer gigs, and hopped from job to job. Never really stuck with anything. Susan and Frank would just smile and say she was figuring out her path. I figured, who knows, maybe one day she'd find her footing and join the company too. But she never showed much interest, at least, not until recently. A few months back, Rachel started popping into the office. At first, it was just to lend a hand with social media. Then she started dropping into strategy meetings, tossing around bold ideas, asking pointed questions, most of which showed she didn't really grasp how things worked. She didn't have any background in consulting, had never even met most of our longtime clients, but somehow my parents started treating her like the second coming of Brian Keating. I tried to stay cool, kept my mouth shut when she took credit for a proposal I poured weeks into, bit my tongue when she called a senior client CEO by the wrong name during a big presentation, and Frank just laughed it off like it was nothing. I told myself it was just classic sibling tension. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Then came the night that flipped my whole world upside down. It was a Saturday. We were all gathered at my parents' place, me, Rachel, Susan and Frank, and a few of their longtime industry friends. Halfway through dessert, Frank raised his glass and said they'd finally made a decision about who would take over the company once they stepped back. I remember smiling politely, thinking it was just one of those boost Rachel's confidence moments. But then he said it. They were giving the business to Rachel, not as a co-owner, not as a partner, but as the sole owner. She'd be taking over as CEO, effective immediately, with full control. I nearly spit out my wine. I just stared at him, waiting for the joke to land. But it didn't. Susan was sitting there glowing, like they were passing down a treasured heirloom. And somehow, I was supposed to be thankful for it. I stood up, my heart thudding like a war drum in my chest, and asked flat out if this was supposed to be a joke. Frank just let out this long sigh and said Rachel had the vision to take the company into the future. According to him, I was too caught up in the day-to-day, too stuck in the old way of doing things. He told me they respected my hard work, but that the business needed new energy. All I could do was let out a bitter laugh, empty and sharp, like a cracked glass. I reminded them I'd been grinding through 80-hour weeks without ever asking for a dime. I reminded them I'd built our client relationships from the ground up, revamped our entire financial system, and landed our 2 biggest accounts. And now? Now they were tossing me aside like some unpaid intern who overstayed his welcome. And Rachel, she actually had the nerve to smirk and say, "Don't be so dramatic. It's just business." That night, I cleaned out my office, packed every last thing, sent a goodbye email to the team, thanking them for their support and hard work over the years. Then I walked away. No dramatic exit, no big speech. I just vanished. A week later, my phone rang. It was Frank, and he sounded like he was falling apart. One of our major clients, a huge tech company that brought in nearly 40% of our revenue, was threatening to walk. Turned out Rachel had tried to renegotiate their contract without understanding their needs. She wanted to rebrand their whole strategy, even though they never asked for it. Frank was practically begging me to step in, just this once, to try and save the relationship. Said I was the only one who could fix it. I could hear the panic in his voice. He was nearly in tears. I took a breath and said, "Let Rachel handle it. She's the heir now, remember?" And then I hung up. The fallout came fast. I started hearing things through the grapevine, mutual contacts, former coworkers. Key employees were talking about quitting. Clients were second-guessing the firm's direction. Rachel was scrambling. My parents were desperate. Me? I was finally sleeping through the night. 8 full hours, for the first time in years. At first, I figured that was the end of it. Let the place fall apart without me. I didn't owe them anything anymore. But then, something unexpected happened. A few days after that call, I got a message on LinkedIn from the CEO of that same tech company, the one Rachel nearly lost. He told me he respected my decision to walk away, but he missed working with me. Said he trusted me with his business and wanted to know if I'd consider doing some private consulting, even short-term. No strings attached. We grabbed coffee, talked shop. Then another client reached out. Then another. Before I knew it, I had my own small consulting firm. Just me and a few former colleagues who had quietly stepped away from the old company. We started simple. No fancy office, just laptops, coffee mugs, and late-night strategy sessions at my kitchen table. And the clients? A good number of them followed. Not all, but enough. Enough that, within a month, I was making more than I ever had in a full year under my parents' roof. Enough to get noticed. That's when Rachel called. I let it ring. Then Susan sent an email, asking if the three of us, her, Frank, and me, could meet for dinner. Said things hadn't gone the way they expected and that they wanted to talk. I haven't answered yet. Part of me is curious, wondering what they'll say, maybe even hoping for some kind of explanation or apology. But another part of me is still burning. They're only reaching out now because things are falling apart. And the worst part? Rachel's been posting these cryptic quotes on Instagram about betrayal and family snakes, as if I stole something from her. But the truth is, I didn't take a damn thing. I just stopped giving everything away. Now the real question is, do I meet with them? Do I sit down and hear whatever half-baked apology or request they've got ready? Or do I just keep moving forward and never look back? Because if there's one thing this whole mess has taught me, it's that loyalty without respect, that's not loyalty at all. That's just being used. And I'm done being taken advantage of. In the end, I agreed to the dinner. Not because I missed them. Not because I forgave them. I went because I wanted to look them both in the eyes and see if they felt even an ounce of guilt for what they did. I wanted to know if they still believed this was just business, or if reality had finally caught up with them, and they'd realized they bet everything on a fantasy and lost. We met at their favorite steakhouse. The same place we used to go to whenever we landed a new client or hit a company milestone. Contracts signed, promotions celebrated, it all happened there. Walking in felt strange. I wasn't part of that world anymore. Not really. But oddly enough, I wasn't nervous. I didn't feel anxious or angry. I felt free. They were already seated when I walked in. My dad stood up like he didn't know if a hug was appropriate. He didn't go for it. My mom gave a polite, tight smile. Rachel wasn't there, thankfully. We made awkward small talk for maybe 5 minutes. Then Frank cleared his throat and said it straight. We made a mistake. I just looked at him. No snark, no reaction. I stayed quiet and waited him out. He went on. We thought we were doing what was best for the company. We believed giving Rachel control would help take things to the next level. But it's been a disaster. He didn't sugarcoat it. Clients were pulling out. Employees were quitting left and right. Rachel, he said, was in way over her head. Then Susan jumped in. We should have listened to you. We didn't realize how much you were keeping everything together. I gave a slow nod. Still didn't say a word. And then came the real reason for dinner. The pitch. They wanted me to come back, but not just as another employee. They were offering me the CEO title. Full control. Ownership transfer. Rebranding under my leadership. Clean house if I needed to. They promised they'd step back entirely. Rachel would be out of the picture. No debate. No strings. It was everything I used to dream about. Everything I had worked for and earned. But as I looked at them, something inside me twisted. Why now? I asked. Because the money's gone? I pressed. Because your golden child burned it all down? Frank winced. Because we were wrong, he said. And because you're the only one who can save it. For a second, I felt it. That old pull. The part of me that still cared deeply about the company. The part that loved the work. The people I had mentored. The legacy we built. And yeah, maybe the part that still craved my parents' approval. But that part of me? It died the night they handed my life's work to someone who hadn't earned any of it. I already have a company, I told them, steady and calm. One I built. One where I don't have to prove I belong every single day. Susan's expression cracked. We just thought you'd want it back. You didn't think I'd want it when you gave it away? I asked. They offered to buy out my new firm. Said we could merge, rebuild together. Like it could all be undone. I told them no. Clear and final. And then I asked the one question I'd been carrying since the night they blindsided me. Wire. Silence stretched between us. Then finally, my dad looked down and said, because she needed it more. She was struggling. We thought giving her a purpose might help. I laughed, not out of bitterness this time. It was the kind of laugh you give when you've heard something so ridiculous, you can't quite believe it. So you sacrificed the daughter who was thriving, I said, to save the one who wasn't? They didn't say a word. I stood up, set my napkin down on the table, and told them I hoped they'd figure out how to clean up the mess they made. But I wasn't going to be part of it. Not this time. Not ever again. As I walked out of that restaurant, I felt lighter than I had in years, like I'd finally laid something heavy down that I didn't realize I'd been carrying. That was 6 months ago. Since then, my firm has tripled in size. We've got an office downtown now, full-time staff, and a waiting list of clients. Investors reach out to us. We're not chasing anyone anymore. And for the first time, my name is starting to carry weight in the industry. Not because of my last name, or who my parents are, but because of what I've built on my own, in spite of everything. As for Rachel, she's no longer CEO. Word is she tried to dump the blame on a junior manager during a tense board meeting, then stormed out when it didn't go her way. That was the end of her reign. My parents are still trying to pick up the pieces, but most of the big clients? They're long gone. Same with the best employees. Funny thing, some of those folks now work for me. I don't talk to my family anymore. Not out of hate. Just clarity. They made their decision, and I made mine. People often confuse legacy with loyalty. They assume that if something's passed down, it's sacred, that it should be preserved, even if it's hurting you. But I've come to learn something important. Blood isn't a business plan. And being family doesn't mean you get my blind loyalty. I didn't light the match that burned that bridge. They torched it themselves the moment they pushed me off it. All I did was build something better on the other side. And now, I don't need their bridge at all.